Hello and welcome to TLDR US. As many of you know, the Iowa caucuses took place last Monday, and the results were, to put it mildly, a mess. So in this video we're going to explain the caucus process, what happened in Iowa, and who won the state. If you haven't heard already, we've started a Patreon account for TLDR US, where you can support our US content and get great perks including exclusive pin badges, early access to some of our videos, and thanks at the end of every video. Also, if we get to our first milestone, we'll guarantee at least 2 videos a week. There's a link to the Patreon in the description. So before we get into the mess or the result, let's quickly explain what caucuses are for a bit of context. The Iowa caucuses are the first in a series of votes that make up the primary elections in the United States. Primary elections are basically how the parties pick their nominee to run for office. In this case, the office of president. If you're from the UK or another parliamentary country, you can think of these as like party leadership elections. Each state or territory votes and allocates delegates, people who vote for their pledged candidate, proportionally by vote. These delegates then attend the Democratic National Convention in July, where they officially cast their votes for the nominee. But usually by then there's a clear winner in the vote numbers, and these delegate votes are normally just a formality. When it comes to individuals placing their votes, there are 2 methods of voting used. Firstly, there are primaries, which are just like normal votes. You go to a polling station, place a vote, and then leave. The second type are caucuses, and these are a bit more complicated. Basically, people who live in states where they hold caucuses instead of primaries go to a large room, like a school gymnasium, and there they sort themselves by candidate, having to physically walk across the room if they decide to switch candidates. Then the winner is worked out and the precinct captain reports the result to the Democratic Party. This is a very brief explanation of a very complicated process, but it's a caucus like this which took place in Iowa at the beginning of the week. Another question you might be asking is, why is Iowa so important? Well, simply put, Iowa is important because it comes first. Whereas most other states hold their primary elections in March or April, the so-called early states hold theirs in February. New Hampshire's constitution states that they must hold the first primary in the nomination process, but Iowa gets around this by holding the first caucus of the process. Due to this, Iowa comes first, followed by New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina. These states are often seen as a jumping off point, and Democratic candidates who do well in Iowa have historically been propelled into the national spotlight very quickly. This allows candidates who are polling lower nationally to make themselves the centre of attention if they win the Iowa caucus, something that definitely helped then candidate Barack Obama back in 2018. So we know how people vote, and we know why this vote is important, but what actually happened on Monday? Well, the answer to that is a bit more complicated than expected. Due to issues with the vote reporting technology in the state, results weren't announced on Monday after the caucuses were completed. The biggest problem was an issue with the app that the Iowa Democratic Party was supposed to be using to track the winner of each caucus location. This issue was compounded when the backup phone line also failed. This led to a lot of precinct captains unable to submit their precinct's vote. The idea was that this app would make the process quicker and more efficient, but some, including University of Iowa computer scientist Douglas Jones, warned that this problem could happen ahead of time. Instead of making things easier, the confusion led to frustration and even suspicions. In fact, this chaos led to the hashtag #MayorCheat trending online, with some questioning the Buttigieg campaign after Pete announced his success before any official results were announced. Also, there were suspicions about potential links between the Buttigieg campaign and the company behind the app. Pete brushed off the criticisms, saying that his announcement was all down to his team tracking the paper process, rather than anything shady, commenting it's verifiable, but still very, very frustrating. As of the time of writing, the Iowa Democratic Party has released 71% of precinct results. The other 29% have not yet been released. It's still unknown when the remainder of the results will be released, but the 71% we have now gives us a pretty good idea of the results. The totals so far back up Pete's claims, with the former mayor leading the vote count total, with around 27% of the votes. In a close second is Bernie Sanders with 25%, followed by Elizabeth Warren with 18%, Joe Biden with 15%, and Amy Klobuchar with 13%. This is very good news for Buttigieg, who's been polling far below Biden, Sanders, and Warren nationally. That said, due to the confusion surrounding the results, it's unlikely that he'll receive the momentum that would have been awarded to him had the results been more straightforward and prompt. He is, however, polling better in New Hampshire, and if he wins both of the first states, he could pick up speed very rapidly. Sanders' vote share is also likely to do him good, especially with his momentum building nationally. But like Buttigieg, caucus night was not all good for Sanders. Going into voting, many had expected him to come out with the most votes, meaning that many will see his second place as a loss. Warren's performance, however, was pretty much exactly what people were expecting. This means that she likely won't have a massive influx of support, but it also means that her campaign will be harder to attack. The same can't be said for Joe Biden, who significantly underperformed his recent polls. Coming in fourth place is not a good sign for Biden, who's been the frontrunner for nearly the entire campaign. He is still polling well above the other candidates for both Nevada and South Carolina, but his results in Iowa have thrown his standing in the race into question. The final candidate who won a large proportion of the vote is Amy Klobuchar, who massively outperformed most expectations and has garnered much attention for her impressive performance. These results are still excluding a large proportion of the vote though. The main question this leads to is, will Sanders do well enough in the remaining results to overtake Buttigieg's lead? The simple answer to that question is that we don't know yet. And even if Sanders does replace Buttigieg as Iowa's winner, it's unlikely that much will change. As we mentioned earlier, the confusion around the results this year has lessened the impact an Iowa victory will have on whichever campaign officially achieves it, meaning that even if Sanders and Buttigieg swap places, it likely won't have too much of an effect on their campaigns moving forward. But this election cycle is nothing if not unpredictable, so who knows what will happen moving forward. In the meantime, all of the candidates have moved on to New Hampshire, hoping to capture enough of the vote there to win the state's primary next Tuesday. If you want to be kept up to date with the latest developments, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you can be notified when we post a new video. Also, if you want more from us across other social networks, you can search for TLDR News. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this possible.